Welcome to today's webinar. We are going to look at verinice and how to perform an ISMS according to ISO 27001. So we will switch into the according perspective in a second. Just to cover here, there are other standards which can be implemented in an ISMS in verinice. There is, for instance, the VDA, which is based on the ISO 27001 standard. So that's a questionnaire by the German Car Society, Manufacturer Society, to make self-assessments and to provide a basic ISMS in verinice. And of course, we do have the BSI baseline IT security in the older version and in the newer version. And today, as I said, we will cover the ISO 27001 perspective. So we are going to create an ISMS according to ISO 27001, 2, and 5. And to give a little frame to what we are doing right now, I would like to show the object model in verinice, which we provide here, especially according to the ISO 27005, which means the risk analysis. And I'm switching to this diagram here or flow chart, and we'll cover the 3-4 aspects at what we will see in a few minutes in verinice. So what we are doing is we are looking, of course, at an organization or part of an organization, and we are going to have a processual view, which means we are looking at the core processes of an organization, which is indicated or which carries a business impact for the organization, indicated by CIA values, so confidentiality, integrity, and availability, of course. All the processes depend on assets, information assets, and we are going to create the structure. We're going to perform a structural analysis of all the assets in an organization, and we will deduce the business impact from the process to the assets. So that's the first part here indicated in blue. We will have a look at. The second part is the yellow-orange down here. So we covered the business impact here in matters of impact, probability, risk matrix. We will look at the probability of any scenario, so anything that could happen in your organization down here. So the scenario, anything that could happen, is indicated by a probability. Plus, optionally, we may have a detailed look at threats, which are indicated by likelihood, and vulnerabilities, which are indicated by a level of vulnerability. So those two in combination lead to certain scenarios. So far, this is what a lot of people do in a spreadsheet. They have the list of assets, they have the list of scenarios, and now you have to link the relevant assets with the relevant scenarios. And if you just have 100 assets and 100 scenarios, that sums up to 10,000 risks you have to consider. And that's where a tool like verinice comes into place, of course, and because this is the place where really the risk occurs. On the right, you see the controls indicated by a certain control level, which mainly or in most cases reduces the likelihood of a scenario, or in some cases modifies the impact for your organization. That said, let's switch to verinice and let's see and create this scheme here, this organization here. For that, we are switching to the perspective, and perspective in this sense means depending on the standard we are working in, we have a different look at the organization. And the different look exists or consists out of various windows. There is, of course, the information security model, which is the main window, which we will have a look at in a few seconds. There are these cheat sheets on the right, so you may click through here and decide and learn how to work with ISO 27001 in verinice. We will close that as we will cover it in this webinar, of course. If you want to call that back, you can go to Help, Tutorials, and you can reopen these or any of the other tutorials, cheat sheets, which we provide here in verinice. Let's start by creating an organization, first of all, and having a look here in the object browser area. You see that there is a lot of information to store, to save here. Of course, we are going to create the organization and call it Demo 2020. Again, there's a lot of information to indicate, to specify your organization and to describe that. We will look at something different special, because we will define, first of all, the core, the definitions, the parameters for the risk management. So, as I already said, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. There is a proposal, so the verinice team proposes to have the confidentiality in, I think it's 3 levels, yes, 4 levels, 0 to 3. And you see there are placeholder values in here, so that's really a proposal. You may adapt, and you probably need to adapt to your organization. So for example, level 1 external use is indicated by possible financial loss between X and Y euro or dollar or whatever. So the same applies for integrity, of course, and for sure for availability. Plus, we have the threat classification, which means threats are classified by the likelihood of their occurrence in levels 0 to 5, so 6 levels here, and the indication and the levels for the vulnerability. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3. Actually, it's low and highs and very low and very high. So that's more or less a yes and no approach for the definition of vulnerabilities. Plus, up here, you may set the risk acceptance criteria. So that's a threshold where you and your organization may decide that any risk in matters of confidentiality below a level like 4, which you can deduce out of your settings down here, can be tolerated in your organization. You probably do the same here for the other values. So that's, to have the threshold and say, well, any risks which are below a certain combination of business impact and probability can be tolerated. So we don't have to do anything there. Let's store that, which you can do either by pressing the button or, as you see, Control S. So let's save that. And what have we done in here? What do we find in here? So once we create an organization, verinice creates this structure with all the available object types. And of course, those we already have seen in our scheme. There are the processes, there are the assets, there are the scenarios, threats and vulnerabilities, plus the controls. There are certain other ones like audits, exceptions, incidents, persons, of course, records, requirements, responses. Let's create a very simple organization, which is actually just for demonstration purposes, of course. And let's add a process here, which is a very basic one, like, development. And let's have another one, which we will call production. Okay, I would stay with these two examples, and scrolling down here, you see again a lot of information. We will cover the most important part, which is, of course, the definition of the probable business impact. So we are going to set that here because you can easily decide how important this process is for your organization, what an impact might be here. So you are going to decide based on the criteria we defined for your organization, that of course production is for internal use, while it's probably even sensitive. You don't want any information from production going out to your competitor. Integrity for the production should be high as well, and availability, well, it's high, very high. Exceptional, well, let's keep for the very high here. Again, save that, and let's look at the development, which is probably confidential, of course. Surely it is. Integrity, well, normal, high. Let's go for normal here just to be different from production. And availability, well, let's be separate here and let's say, well, production, if your production has a problem, that's probably way more expensive for your company than the development. So let's set this to high just to have some differentiation and save that. Again, this is just an example, could be completely different in your organization, but we set the values, the business impact for the processes here based on the definitions in your organization. Let's go ahead and let's look at the assets. For the assets, I will start with a new asset group. I prefer to have some kind of layer and structure to have a better idea how my assets are structured, are related. So what I'm going to set up here is the physical servers. Let's have another group, which will be the virtual machines. We probably need a new group, which are the applications. And what else? Add new asset group. Yeah, let's have the server rooms or server room. Let's stay with the server room. Okay, actually, I personally prefer to have this sorted in a way so most important for me, so I guess it'd be understandable in a few minutes, is up here. Let's do the virtual machines on level 2. Let's have the physical servers on level 3. And the server rooms finally on level 4. Okay, let's create to start here with something, add new asset for the applications. So we have development and production. So let's go for the CAD software, whatever that is. The new add software. Well, let's have some production related software as well. I'm going to be very unspecific here. Let's go for a new virtual machine. And this one is the production database. And then we probably have something like the CAD media server, I think something like that. It's probably media server or media database, whatever. I think you get the point here. Let's go for the physical server, add a new asset. And this is some whatever blade per, yeah, oh, come on. Physical server, blade 1, whatever. And we have a server room, add new asset. Server room 1. Okay, very simple here. Let me add one more group because I want to explain something. So that's a new group, which are the clients. Okay, and what I'm going to show here, or what I want to explain here, is that we are creating a model of your organization, and I like to say that any model is just a copy of the reality, of course. So, and for the clients, we probably have something like, you would, or a question often asked is, how do I get all my clients in here? And the answer is typically you should group your organization or your information assets. Which you can do as long as they are similar configured in the same network sections and or in the same locations. So what you probably want to do, you don't want to list your 2,000 clients, but you may do something like having all the CAD workstations, and there is this field number because you have 22 of them, and that's why where you group them, how you group them, because the CAD workstations in our model are set up all following the same process and policy, so there is no need to really differentiate those. On the other hand, you have a new asset which might be the marketing max. Oh, sorry. And again, here you have 12 of them. Plus, you may have other clients. So just to show and to explain that we are building a model, this model of the reality, and you have to find a compromise. On the one hand, you want to be as specific as possible in order to achieve a maximum of information security. On the other hand, you simply want to be as easy as possible to reduce the work in the ISMS tool as much as possible, which means you simply want to reduce the number of mouse clicks and entries you have to do to the necessary minimum. And that's why grouping and combining things which can be handled similar is a very, very useful approach here. Fine. So we created a lot of assets, and I think I will stay for these lists so far. Let's save this once again, and we are going to perform the next step. I said earlier when we looked at the scheme that the processes require certain assets, and that's what we are going to create now. We are creating the dependencies between all these assets and processes. That said, for the development, we need the CAD software, of course. And I'm creating the relations here using drag and drop in verinice. So the development needs the CAD software. So the CAD software, verinice explains, is necessary for the process of development. Let's do that for the production software, which is of course required by production. So necessary for, let's continue here. Let's see the CAD media server is of course required for the CAD server, the production server for the production software. And looking once again here, you see production software is still necessary for the production and depends on the database. Both require the physical server, of course, and the server room requires the physical server blade. Marketing Macs are required for the process and or for the software. Well, let's go for the software, for the process, and CAD workstations for development. Fine. So we have created the relations, the dependencies already. Again, this is a very simple example, of course. Let's click through this once again. So development depends on the CAD software and the CAD workstations. I can click through here now. CAD software depends on the media server. Media server depends on the physical server. Physical server depends on the server room, plus some other assets are required here. That's one part. So we created the dependencies and the relations between all your organization's assets. More important here is if we look at the assets one by one, or one by one, you will realize that in this section business impact, we have these checkboxes set by default in verinice, and those indicate that the values down here, the business impact values for confidentiality, integrity, availability, are not set manually, but they are calculated following the dependencies and following the maximum principle. So let's go one step further to the server here. Again, you see that the values are calculated. As I said, following the maximum principle doesn't really apply in our simple model here, but if you have a lot of assets and a lot of relations, it really helps to understand that the business impact is calculated following the maximum principle. You may override this automatism anytime by just unchecking the checkbox, and you may say for any reason, in this case, integrity for this server is high because it's, for whatever reason, it's the media server, so you need to be it needs to be reliable that the media presented is the one it says it presents. So again, to summarize here, and let's switch to the scheme. So we created the organization. We defined the risk parameters, the parameters for the risk calculation and risk analysis. We created processes. We created assets. We defined the business impact, created the relations, deduced the business impact, and if we needed to, when we needed to, we overrode the calculated business impact. So we are fine up here. Let me finish this part with two more tips. As you have seen, I created the relations here using drag and drop. There is another option, which is the link maker, which you will find in the tab in the editor here on the right. So I could create a relation to any other element out of the list to a process or a person. Let's use a person, which is responsible, and we get this list, and I could can differentiate here, say current scope only. No, I want all the persons, and actually this is my demo user, which I created in another organization, so I could choose that one. Okay, and we see we have now someone who is responsible here. Fine, that's one part. So links either using drag and drop or the link maker here. Both possibilities are very helpful. And another very helpful possibility to create your structure is the CSV import. So we entered all the information here one by one manually. There is an option which is called CSV import. And as you see here, you may import objects for each of the object types available in verinice from a CSV, which means any system that provides an export to CSV or something you can convert to CSV can be imported to verinice. For example, a list of servers. So you select the asset, of course, and you need to create a file to import that, which I'm not going to show because you probably have to just test it. It's quite straightforward. But I want to explain those three options here. The good point is that if you want to do that on a regular base, which you probably want in case of maybe a server list, so you have the possibility to do that because verinice will remember any object you already imported by a certain source ID. So let's say you have your server list, which you will import regularly, and as soon as you specify this source ID, verinice will remember the objects you have already imported in a former instance. And then it will be able to insert new objects in verinice. So once your list has changed, additional objects will be created in verinice. If you changed some information on a specific object, it will be updated, and any objects that are not longer included in that server list could be deleted. So this is deactivated by default because you need to set that manually just to be cautious. And now we could update or import this server list. You might select a file, there will be a mapping, and actually you may import any of the fields you see here on the right. So any field in the graphical user interface could be imported. So description, replacement costs, business community, anything in here, even the values could come out of another file or source. And as I said, it could be updated easily. Fine. Let's store that and let's have a look at the orange-yellow part here, so the scenarios, threats, and vulnerabilities. And we are doing that in a different organization. So this is our demo organization, and I prepared something which is the verinice risk catalog. So the verinice risk catalog, according to ISO IEC 27001-2013 EN, is available and it's included in the verinice Pro pricing. So in the verinice Pro subscription, this is available. It's included. For the standalone version, you can purchase this one in the verinice shop. What's in here? It's more or less a sample organization, close to what we already created. So we have some basic processes here. Again, here's our production. And as you see, production is depending on various assets. Let's look for the server. And you see, as verinice follows up here in this catalog, there is a whole list of various types of assets, information assets. And actually there's everything in here which is mentioned somewhere in the ISO 27001 and following. There's anything in here we came upon in our business. So these are really ideas what you should have to think about, what you need to think about, like servers, electronic data types, whatever. So there's a whole bunch of information in here which can help you to check whether your infrastructure has been set up correctly. Or down here, once we continue, you see that the assets are already linked with scenarios. So let's go here. And again, you see that in this risk catalog, there are all the scenarios out of ISO IEC 27005 included. Everything is in here, plus down on the right, you see not for the scenario, but for other objects in a few seconds, all the information from the ISO 27005-201. So the scenarios, again, you have all the lists, and actually those are sorted in special groups, like, for example, of course, natural events, abuse of rights. So there are specific chapters, categories of scenarios. The scenarios, again, are a combination, as I said, of a relevant threat and a relevant vulnerability. So again, let's look here. You see in the risk catalog are all the threats out of the ISO 27000 world, plus, of course, we have the vulnerabilities, the relevant vulnerabilities. Again, those are included here in the catalog. Plus, and that's the most important, all of the scenarios are already linked to certain controls. So we have a model organization here, which does not only include the assets you have to think about and the process you should think about, but also all the elements like scenarios, threats, vulnerabilities, plus all the controls in here, and they are already pre-linked. So it's a proposal from our side. As I said, there are samples up here. There are all the ISO scenarios, threats, vulnerabilities, and we already proposed which assets and which scenarios should be linked. Plus, and that's where we are going to now, we already linked specific controls from the ISO to scenarios and or assets. So let's have a look at that and see how that is implemented. So we have the control here, and as you see, the control modifies the likelihood of certain of various scenarios. So we have, first of all, the probability. We may set the probability directly here, or we could deduce it from the threat and vulnerability. Those are the two here. So I can set the level here, let's say denial of actions, something that could happen monthly. And oops, that's one. And the lack of proof. Okay, let's set this to high for whatever reason. And as a result, we get a value here. It will be calculated here, or you could either set it manually. So you can do that if you want to. Let's keep it calculated here. And on the other hand, we have the controls here. And let's check for the controls. What we need to do here now is, first of all, we decide, is this control implemented, yes or no? Let's say, yes, it is. Could give an explanation. Again, document a lot of other stuff here. Let's save that. And let's go to the other control, which was linked here. Let's show that up here. If you probably watched that, we set this control to yes, implemented, and so it changed the icon up here. Let's do that for another control. Let's set to no. Unfortunately, we haven't done that so far. You see the icon changes here. Let's do that for a few others, and we can use the bulk editor here, so you don't have to perform tasks for each object, but we have the bulk editor at hand. So let's say those are partly implemented. Okay, and you see the icon changes here to the clock to say that there's still time left, still time needed to work on this. That was a very broad, a very top-level process, how to perform this in verinice, how to build up the scheme. We finished with the control and control levels. We created all the links required, and we put all the values in. So we are more or less right to perform the risk calculation. Actually, it probably won't make too much sense with our data here, but anyway, let's calculate that for the risk catalog. This is finished, and I only set that for one scenario, but to have a look here, you will see that verinice calculates the risk values in the combination from our scenario to the affected asset. And here it says, well, there is the risk value for confidentiality, which is 4, integrity 4, availability 4, and you see here the risk value confidentiality with implemented controls. So that's the before values, and those would be the after values. The same for integrity availability, of course. Actually, I didn't set, actually, I got one important thing, which I should finish. This is the implemented control. And sorry, yeah, it's implemented, but we need to specify the effect it has. So let's say, what is the effect here? And I would recommend, let's say for it modifies the scenario by level 2. And in this case, let's say for whatever reason, it also reduces the impact in matters of confidentiality. So let's save that here. Let's go back to, the risk calculation. Again, let's calculate. That's done. And let's look here and here. And you see now that the before and after values are different. So that's the basic mechanism behind here. For the risk analysis, it's actually a very simple example. It's way more interesting to look at the result. And that's where we are going to look at one report. To cover that, verinice has the possibility to generate reports, of course, and there is a whole lot of ready report templates, ready to use report templates for the various perspectives. So there are the baseline reports, of course, and there are a whole lot of report templates for the ISM perspective, and of course, risk assessment, risk calculation, risk treatment. or statement of applicability. I'm not going to run the report here because with the values we have calculated be very helpful. But just to say, those report templates are standard reports, so they are available with any verinice installation, either Pro or standalone. And you may modify those reports using the file designer, but all the standard reports are there. And we are going to look at a sample, which is the information risk management results. And here we have, you would see, first of all, the criteria, the risk acceptance criteria, which have been set to some values in order to indicate everything below these thresholds is green, which means the risks fall within the risk acceptance criteria for your organization. There are certain graphs here, and the most important one, or the nicest for the beginning, is that you would see the identified risks here in matters again, confidentiality, integrity, availability. And you see there are a lot of risks in the high and red category, some in yellow and a few in the green category. The same here. And let me get that on one page, more impressive. Okay, so, and you see here, even more identified risks. Okay, fine. Identified risks up here and remaining risks with implemented controls. And here you see very nicely that you shifted the risk from the red and yellow to the yellow and green for all the CIA parameters. So that's something that helps you, of course, to indicate the success and the risk management, risk handling, risk treatment, of course. So that's very impressive, and that's the result of performing the risk analysis after creating an ISMS in verinice. There is another view here, actually a spreadsheet, simple table spreadsheet saying, well, what are the assets with the highest risks up here? And here you see that monitoring was an issue before. After implementing controls, it's not longer in the top list here. So probably you have reduced your risks concerning or regarding the asset of monitoring. Another one which looks at the categories, high risk areas. So for example, error in use or natural events. So that are the groups of the scenarios. And you see error in use was a problem here. And it's not longer a problem afterwards. Well, it's actually a smaller problem, let's say this way. So again, here you see the effect, the consequence of your risk treatment. This special report continues with a list or a matrix of all the combinations of impact and probability. So here you really see that you have 168 risks with the probability of medium probability of 3 with the highest impact of 3. So yeah, it's 3, right? So that's a detailed view here to really indicate where are the risks I want to look at mainly. So that's a good additional information again for confidentiality, integrity, availability. And finally, you get the definitions, the parameters you set here. And then there are another 90 pages or something, 90 something pages in this case, indicating all the relation between each asset and the corresponding relevant scenarios and all the single values plus the overall risk category, yellow, red here. So that's a very detailed view here, down here, with all the information risk by risk listed here. So that's one sample report for the risk management. That done, we are through with the creation of the ISMS. Let's look at the windows. You see I have handled various windows or views as we call it in this Eclipse framework. And you may change the combination here completely. So first of all, you might close all the windows by default or by error, by mistake. So actually, this is where we get the first support call. All my data is gone. Actually, it's not. So you may go up here, right mouse click, and reset the perspective. Yeah, I want to reset that. Actually, it works. Okay. Okay, there's some problem, but anyway, so usually you could reset your combination of windows using the reset button here. For whatever reason, there was some problem. I don't care right now, but you may add a whole lot of other views here. Show view, view, show view. So they are sorted here. Those are the views reserved for the old IT baseline protection. This is the new baseline protection. This is under our ISM security model, of course. We have the ISA views, and here we have various views which are available in all the perspectives. There are, for example, the files view. Let's have a look at that one. The relations view down on the left, validations. There is a search. Let's cover that as well. So what else? Notes, you may take notes. We have the object browser, external links view. So all these are available for all the perspectives. You may play around with it. Let's look at the files view. That's where we wanted to go. Let's say we want to add a link or store a file here, which we can do for any object. Let's look for whatever object here. And we could, first of all, link to a certain document file. So you could add something like a policy which is located somewhere in your organization. It's probably in a SharePoint. Policy.doc or something like that. You could link there. So I could open that document from here. The other option for handling a document management would be to add a file. That's where we wanted to hit. So let's add a file here. Something is missing, sorry. So let's add a file here. As you see, you could also use drag and drop from the browser. I will make it this way around. So let's add a PNG, our well-known scheme here. It has a title. You could give a description, specify a version. You could even mention a document state. Let's say this is for approval request. And once we say that, you see it is indicated, it is stored as a file in the database, in the verinice database now. Actually, it gets a timestamp, which you cannot overwrite, so it's revision secure. So you could add the same document. It would be stored as a copy with a different timestamp. You may delete one or the other, but you cannot modify anything on a in an object, in a file stored once in verinice. So that's the files for attachments. Once again, either you store the files in the database or you may link them using the change document button here. There's a search as well. Let's search for something like CAD, probably. And you will see CAD workstations in our demo 2020. We created that one. I could open that from here and have a look at this element. So it's a universal search which helps you to find anything you are looking for. Plus, you may select the columns to be displayed. So you could modify anything here in the display, and you may have a quick export here of that CSV if you want to have some, data. If you need the data for some reason outside, want to create a fast overview, something like that, you could do that easily using the search. For all the object types, so we had the assets, could be the controls as well. So that's something. So very useful generic search implemented here, which can give you some good ideas and can be very helpful. I think those were the main views we should have a look at so far. And I would like to finish the presentation with the accounts and account groups. So the task workflow, better said, in verinice. First of all, we have the possibility, verinice has a very detailed right and roles model. So we have account groups where we can assign all the users into certain groups, and those groups can be linked with profiles. And the basic concept here is to say that we have the possibility to decide which group or which user may access which parts of your organization or the organizations. So that's a very detailed user right and role concept. So you could go down to each single object and define that access control here is only available for or assigned to a certain user, or preferably, of course, a certain user group. And you may set that to read, write. It could be inherited through the structure here. Or as I said, you could assign this to a single object in verinice. So very granular here. On the other hand, there are profiles where you may assign all the possible tasks and rights a user has, which is more or less the right mouse click here. So anything you could do, like, copy, cut, delete, you can limit this for each user and or user group. So very fine, detailed user and right concept. And let's use that for creating a task. Let's check for one control we want to implement. Let's go to our controls. And let's take some more backup. Oh, come on. Okay, let's take those four. Let's select them and right mouse click, task, create an individual task. Let's do that. So what are we going to do? First of all, we take our template. So I've used that earlier in my presentation, of course. So please implement the task and send screenshot as proof, something like that. There is a release process included, which you may activate, which we are going to do. We will set the due date for this task to, let's say, that the bug. Come on, I want that in the future. Okay. Okay, so let's set the due date to something end of August, something like that. We may have a reminder period, something like whatever, maximum is 30 days, I think. So in this case, what would happen as soon as we create the tasks, the user would get an email indicating or saying that he should log into verinice because there is some task for him to perform on the 31st of August, and there will be a reminder email on the 30th of July indicating that the user has a task to be performed in 30 days. So both emails will be sent by verinice or out of verinice. Here's the user, and fortunately we have just the one, so we're going to select that user. And we can define the information the user gets displayed in the web front end. So I disabled something like, coast, revision, whatever. Let's remove that one as well, and let's keep those. That should be fine. Next, we get a summary, and now we are going to finish. So we have the tasks created. Let's have a look at those in the tasks view. And now it's loading quite some amount here. I created it here, so let's limit it a little bit. Okay, while we are waiting here, let's head to something different, because we are looking at this now in the same role. So, which means I created the tasks. Let's switch to the web front end. So, in the verinice Pro version, you have access to verinice using using a web browser. So let's log in here as ISMS demo user. And once we do that, you get the welcome screen with some information like, download the clients from your server if that's enabled. You have the user guide here and some service or other contacts as well to the verinice team. We're going to want to look at the task section here. And once we go there, need to wait. Okay, so here are my 4 tasks which I have been assigned. Let's click through that. Let's look at the first one. Okay, so here you see the details. So what do I have to do with this control? So implementation, first of all, let's say yes, we implemented that. Fixed now for whatever reason, or implemented now. We could attach something, and let's again use my PNG here. You see that is attached here. Let's save that. Task is updated, and for completion, I would say this task is completed. For the next task, I would say, well, I can't get it done right in time, so I will apply for an extension. Need 2 more weeks for this. Okay, it will stay in my list because I still have to work on it. And for the capacity management, let's say that's something which is not in my responsibility. So I'm just going to say I'm not responsible, and you see it disappears here. Actually, the web front end is mainly thought to enable not core team members to work on tasks without having to install the client. So this is mainly for the task workflow, and there it's a very useful tool. Let's log out here. Let's go back to verinice. And meanwhile, you see something happened here. Let's re-scan here to get the actual the new status. Okay, won't update here. But anyway, let's work here. Let's say there has been done something here. And first of all, we want to see what has been done. So let's compare that. Come on. Okay, do it once again. Okay, sorry. Actually, it takes a little bit of time sometimes. Anyway, let's see here. So something has changed. First of all, the status of the task has changed here. Check realization. That's what I wanted to do. So let's see what has been changed. You will see here old field name, or the field name of the old. The old status was unedited. Meanwhile, it's edited. Explanation fixed now. Okay. So I can accept that now. And you see the task disappears out of the list. On the other hand, here was the information change management, applied for extension. So reason, need 2 more weeks for this. Fine, let's go for this, change due date. And let's say, well, mid of October, whatever. It will stay in the list, it just will change the date. The other one was assignee not responsible. So here I could assign another person. Unfortunately, I just have the one demo user, so it has to stay with him. So what I wanted to show here is the task workflow, especially in combination between the backend and the web front end. Sorry for some delays here, but actually on the virtual machines I'm using here, there is some lag for any reason. But I guess the idea is understandable, is clear. I'm more or less done with the presentation now. I would like to thank you for your interest. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact us at verinice@zernet.de or using the website. Thank you for your time.